Welcome all. Today our training topic is management of change. In short, it is said MOC. And today is our day 19 of this training session. Actually, the management of change is done by the operation department or the maintenance department. But as a safety officer, you should know about the management of change process. So let's start the session. In this training session, we will learn the following elements. Number one is what is management of change, management of change approvals, procedure for MOC process, short definitions, types of MOC, categories of change for MOC process, and in last, notes. So let's see what is the management of change. It is a decision making and project planning tool. It provides a framework for assessing proposed changes to equipment, processes, operating guidelines, or personnel to determine the risk that could potentially result from the change. Then examines ways to mitigate the risk and methods for communicating this information to the appropriate decision level for approval. So actually, what is management of change and what it's telling? The management of change is the process if in a company or at the project site, at the risk site, if anything is changed. And here I want to say one thing, the change is of two kinds. One is permanent change and one is temporary change. So if any change is made of equipment, processes, operating guidelines, or the personnel, so due to this change, what the risk will be developed. So mitigate those risks through the risk assessment and control measures and communicate these all things to the appropriate authority for the approval so that we are changing either equipment or process or anything at the site, and the risk what are developing due to this change, those have been mitigated or controlled, and now our change is safe and acceptable and as well as beneficial. So now we have to uh, um, share this all things and documentation and information with the proper authority for the approval. This process is called management of change process. All changes shall be risk assessed to ensure that they do not inadvertently introduce other risk. Changes and their consequences shall be discussed and approved. So all the changes will be risk assessed so that the change should be, the consequence of change should be safe and beneficial as well. Here is a note, the MOC process does not apply to the change in kind, exact replacement, restoration, or repair. If any equipment, for example, a pump, mud pump, or any equipment is being repaired or doing maintenance, and during the maintenance, if you change any part of that pump, and that part is of the same make and model of the part which already installed in that pump, and you are replacing that part, both the part of the same make and model, and you are doing the general maintenance and repair, so it will not come under the management of change because it's a general maintenance. Okay, the reason of focusing MOC is minimizing health, safety, and environmental risk, or reducing the potential impact on the operational performance or efficiency. So, MOC is focused or practiced to minimizing, because whenever we are making any change at the site or the operation department, maintenance department, any technician just advised to his engineer or supervisor, sir, we can use this equipment in the place of the old equipment what we are using, because the new equipment has more technological uh, uh, um, plus points. Okay, and more safe as well. So if anything will be changed, either that is any equipment, that is any process, that is operating guidelines of any equipment, or the process of doing the shutdown of any equipment, and even any employee is being changed or replaced. So for making any change, the MOC, management of change practice, should be followed, because if we follow the management of change process to change anything at the work site, it minimizes the health, safety, and environmental risk, and also it reducing the potential impact on our operation and our performance, and even our work site as well. The impact of the risk could result from a proposed change to equipment, process, and operating guidelines, or the personnel. Okay, so from the impact of changing these all things, if we follow the MOC, it will reduce the risk. Okay, so for changing anything at the work site, we should follow the MOC procedure. Apart from this, the process is a check and balance to make sure that a proposed change do not violate any procedure, rules, and regulation. The MOC process also facilitates good communication within the company. So if we follow the MOC process, so it also advises us that we are not violating any procedure and any regulation. And also it's a good way for the communication, because when we are changing anything, we are going through the standard practice. So during this, all the steps, there are documentation, there are meetings, there are communication system, there are also training system. So the change and the change effect and the change benefit, and about the new change technology or new machinery which is being brought in the practice at the work site. So all information related to this change are being communicated to all the parties. So that's why it's a good way for the communication as well. Risk assessment is a very important part for the management of change process. It is said heart of the MOC process. Why? Because if we change anything, so the new system, the new process, or the new technology, or the new equipment, new operating guidelines we are bringing in our practice at our work site, so that may have other risks from which we are unaware. So if we do the risk assessment, we can identify the hazard, we can calculate the risk, we can evaluate the risk, we can know the risk level through the risk matrix, and we can control and mitigate that risk through the control measure. So if we do the risk assessment, so the change has no adverse or dangerous consequence. So that's why the risk assessment is very important in the management of change process. So as we have seen earlier, the changes, what changes we do through the MOC, which we change the operating guidelines, we change the personal staff, we change the process, and we change the equipment. So again, here we are seeing the significant change what we made through the MOC. The number one is any changes to parts, okay, equipment, or facilities, including changes resulting from purchasing a replacement with a non-identical make and model. So here is telling that if we are doing any change in equipment, any facilities changing, and if, for example, if we are doing maintenance of an equipment and we need to change a part of that equipment, for example, the shaft, okay, so through the purchasing, we are not getting the same shaft of the make and model which was earlier installed in that equipment. So for this, we will have to go through the management of change process. If we get the same part, the part what we are changing, and we got that part of same make and model, which was all earlier installed, and this in that equipment. In the situation, we no need to go for a management of change process. Okay, I think you got the point. If the same thing we get, we no need to go for the MOC. If we do not get the same make and model, then we need to go to the MOC process. Now, next one is any organizational or the staff changes. If any staff or any person is changed actually at the risk side, at the work location, at the project side, so in that situation also MOC process will be followed. Why? Because if a person, for example, the tool pusher at site, if a night tool pusher is there, if the rig manager is there, if safety officer is there, if any QC engineer is there, if drilling superintendent is there, if any maintenance engineer is there, so all are certified by the client. The client has assessed their skill and efficiency and evaluated their ability, and then they approved them to do the job at their work location. So if the contractor do any change, okay, does a contractor does any change of staff, so for changing the staff also, the contractor will have to go through the management of change, and contractor needs to take permission and approval by the client, okay, for that staff change as well. Any significant process or drilling process improvement changes. If any process at the work site or drilling process is being changed, so for this also the contractor needs to go through the MOC process and get the approval by the authority. It means the client. Okay. Any changes to standards, material specifications, operating conditions, methods, or procedures. These are the examples of the significant change. So as you remember, I earlier said that the changes are of two types. One is permanent change and one is temporary change. We'll see later the short definition of that. I believe you got the point. What are the difference between both the changes? So if you are doing the change, so what is the process actually aspect of the management of change process approvals? Okay, so if the risk rating is, we are starting from the bottom. If the risk rating through the risk matrix is low, then it needs approval from the field superintendent. If the risk rating is medium, then the approval needs from the operations manager. If the risk is high, then the approval needs from the senior vice president, senior engineer, and senior HSE manager. The approval needs from these three people. Okay, all these three people, not only one of these three people. The approval needs from these three people, one, then two, and then three. Okay, now procedure for MOC process. In order to maximize the effectiveness of the MOC process, okay, it is important that all affected personnel are involved before starting the MOC. Okay, when the MOC is started, how the MOC started, it starts actually restarted. We will see later, but I tell you, the MOC starts uh, through the filling a MOC request form. Okay, so before starting the MOC process, all the affected parties or the affected personnel should be uh, come for the meeting, okay, and discuss all this, what the changes we are going to make. It increased the effectiveness of the MOC. A pre-project review should be held by the operations, HSE, and other applicable personnel to ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of the process. Okay, so there will be a discussion meeting, and all the changes what we are going to make, those will be discussed there. Okay, because the advices from other person who will be affected by this change, they will share their ideas, their experience, their advices related to the change. Will this change be beneficial and safe and productive or not? Okay, so it will maximize the effectiveness of the MOC process. And if suppose the change process already completed and approval already got, so before implementing the change into service, a pre-startup review must be conducted so that the personnel have a chance to ensure that the risk and hazards have been controlled. So if a change already have been approved, and now before implementing the change at the practically at the work site, there should be a pre-startup review. Okay, pre-startup review to ensure that the all the hazards and risks have been controlled, and the change will not develop any risk or hazard or adverse situation at the work site. It means that risks have been mitigated and controlled, and now the change is safe. Okay, so here is the 6 steps of the MOC process. Okay, if anything needs to be changed, there are 6 steps for that. Number one, identify the change. Identify the change type and benefit to the company and categorizing the change as either permanent or the temporary. Okay, first identify the change. So we should change this process. This process is not more safe. Okay, for example, we have to change this equipment. Okay, because this equipment has no barrier against the hazard. Okay, and the new equipment which have been developed or brought in the market have more safety features. So any technician, any supervisor, any engineer found that the utilizing the new technology and new electronical machines are more safe. So he will start the first. He will identify the change and then initiate MOC request, and the person initiates the MOC request by discussing it with his supervisor or engineer, okay, or departmental manager maybe, to assess the benefits and determine if it is safe. Okay, the person who identified the change, he will discuss with the with his boss, actually the senior person, supervisor or engineer. Okay, and he will discuss that it will be beneficial and safe as well. And filling the MOC change request form, there is a form actually in all the companies for changing anything MOC process. That is the name of that is MOC change request form. Okay, and attach any relevant documents and submit the form to the department MOC coordinator. MOC coordinator is a person who records all the MOC forms and who tracks all the MOC change forms, and as well as he reporting about the status of the MOC change request forms that we have. For example, we have submitted that MOC change request form last before 1 month. So can I know what is the status of that? Has that been approved and the risk assessment is completed? So what is the status of that request form? So this is the person who manages all these activities. And as here is mentioned that the first, the initiator, the person who identified the change, he will fill the MOC change request form and attach the relevant documents. Those documents are drawings. The documents may be the drawings, data sheets, organization chart and position descriptions, new procedure. So these documents will be attached with this MOC change request form. Now the step 3, MOC is reviewed by the initiator or originator. The initiator and originator both have same meaning. It means that initiator or originator, it means that the number one point, the person who identified that the change is required, that person means is same, the initiator and originator. Now presenting the idea to the concerned team who decides whether it needs to proceed to the design step or not. Okay, then number 4 is MOC development. The MOC is developed by the change design team. The change design team is, they are the departmental subject matter experts. This a team of few people, few employees who are the subject matter expert on that particular field, of that particular, if that is a change related to the mechanical, so they will be subject matter expert. It means they will be very proficient and experienced on the mechanical engineering field. So this is a team of those people to determine if a risk assessment or other engineering studies are required. If so, they undertake the risk assessment and required studies and develop plans for the ideas implementation. Okay, so they will do this part. Then number 5, approve and implement change. Implement the change by the change design team. These people, okay, these people means the subject matter expert on that particular topic. Okay, team and presenting the design to the change review team. This change review team are the expert personnel and selected by the multidiscipline uh, departments by the department head. Okay, this team, and this team determines if the change is safe and whether the design meets with the original intent. The final authorization is given by the department head. These people will, in the meeting, they will advise, they will present all the risk assessment documentations. These are all the papers, okay, and their ideas, okay, their information. In the meeting, they will advise them, they will to the department head, and now the department head finds then it is the change is beneficial and safe. Then the department head to will to give the authorization and to make that change. Okay, and the change will proceed. Now number six till 5, the change approval already have been gotten actually. Okay, number 6, document, update, and close the MOC. Document, update, and close the MOC by checking that communication of the change is completed. Okay, why the communication is needed? In earlier slide, we have seen that because of the change bringing the new process, the new technology, the new machinery, the new equipment, the new personnel. So the communication is very important to the other persons who may be affected due to this change. The person, if a technician is using a machinery and the machine has been changed now, so the information should be communicated about this new machinery, the hazards, the operating procedure, and the shutdown system. Everything should be communicated to that technician or operator who is using that. Not only even the operator, the technician also, the technician who do the maintenance time to time, he will also be informed about this new technology or the new machinery, all the aspects, okay, the hazards, the safety, the control levers, and all these things. So communication is also important, and including any required, is there any training required training? Okay, and all documents are updated, and it is confirmed that the process has been completed, and now the MOC is closed and the new system has been brought in the practice at the website. So the communication, what we saw over here, communication is also important. When a change is made in a process that will affect how drilling and workover performs a specific task, those changes shall be communicated across the organization to ensure the change is effectively implemented. Okay, so if anything has been changed, this information should be communicated to other parties or affected parties. And training need analysis change, so it will also be analyzed over here. Any training is required? If any training is required, the training will be arranged and the training will be provided to the person who uses that machinery, or the person who do any maintenance job, or anybody, for example, a process of doing the shutdown of an equipment have been changed through the MOC process. So this change, new changed process will be communicated to the all affected parties, the person who needs to apply those process. So the training, if the training is needed, the training will be given all those parties. Okay, the MOC initiator or originator. Actually, he's the person. First, the initiator or originator are the same thing. He's the person who identifies the change is required. Okay, see over here. The MOC initiator is the person who recognizes a change is needed or desirable and brings it to the attention of the MOC owner. Anyone can suggest a change if the change is beneficial and safe, then it will be the MOC process will be initiated or processed. Approval authority. The approval authority, the same, the department head, the senior person who approves the change after all the process have been finished, the risk assessment completed, the engineering studies have been completed, the cost and the what resources are needed, and the change will be safe and beneficial. So after that, the authority gives the approval for that change. Okay. Now, hazard identification. The process of recognizing that a hazard exists and defining its characteristics is hazard identification. Okay, as we saw earlier, types of MOC. The MOC are of two types. One is permanent change and other is temporary change. So, permanent change. A permanent change is one which once implemented is a permanent. Okay, it will not be changed. It will be permanent. Feature of the design, organizational structure, operation, of procedural control, site operations, associated site infrastructure or supporting services, or any process, okay, anything which have been changed and that will not be the changed, and that is permanent. It means that is permanent change. And temporary change, a change which is done for a short period of time, that is not fixed, it's called the temporary change. And if a temporary change, and temporary change should be less than 6 months. If a temporary change lasts more than 6 months, then it needs again to apply all the permanent change MOC process. Okay, so it means the temporary change is should be below 6 months. Okay, okay. Now the categories of change for the MOC process. For the purpose of this standard, change is divided into following categories, each addressed with appropriate procedures, documentation, and audits. Okay, every the change should have appropriate procedures, documentation, and audits as well. These 5 categories apply for their permanent or temporary changes. Okay, if the change is temporary or permanent, these 5 categories, all the categories will be this actually um, 6 categories are there actually. I think 5 categories are there. One, two, three, four, five. Okay. The physical change. Number one, category one is physical change. The physical change is changes to any equipment component. Equipment changes may be any addition, deletion, piping, bypass, or modification is physical change. Physical changes include new components, installation as well as modifications to the following: facility or equipment design, an upgrade to existing equipment, structural support, layout and configuration. If we do any changes in the equipment and equipment component, or any upgrade to the existing equipment, that is physical change. Number two, category two is procedural change. Procedural change, changes to the procedures in printed or electronic format, operating procedures, startup and shutdown process. Okay, startup of the plant or startup of any equipment. Okay, a shutdown procedure of any equipment or shutdown of the plant, shutdown of any plant unit. Okay, what is the process of the shutdown? Maintenance procedure, emergency management plans and emergency evacuation plan, hurricane evacuation manual are the procedural change. If we make any changes in all these following things, it will come under the procedural change. Procedural change include the following: operations outside the scope of the current operating procedure. So what the operating procedure we are having, so we are not using that and we are using the new one, that will come under the procedural change. Okay, for this we need to do the manual change process, and when we will go the approval by the authority, then we can use the new procedure. Modifications to meet the special circumstances. Category 3, critical personnel changes. So if any personnel is being changed, for example, any QC engineer is replaced, so for this also we need to do the MOC process, or for example, any one new staff is being assigned in the work site, okay, during the project, so it also needs the approval. So we need to go through the MOC procedure. Category 4 is emergency changes. Any emergency change is an immediate temporary change necessitated by a sudden, abnormal, or unplanned situation that may endanger or damage the human life, the environment assets or reputation, and requires immediate attention. So if we do the emergency change to save the employees, environment, and plant as well, okay. The goals of managing emergency change are as follows: to prevent the injury to the personnel or damage to the equipment, to correct immediate safety and fire hazards or extreme service failure, to prevent the significant loss of productivity or assets. So to save from all this, we do the emergency change. Yeah, the notes: ensure full implementation of this MOC process at the project. So the managers have to ensure that, and for making any change at the site, the proper MOC process is should be practiced and applied. Ensure the implementation of MOC process is audited annually. All the MOC should be audited annually. Okay. Ensure the hazard identification section has been completed prior to the submittal of the MOC request. All the hazards should be identified uh, and before submit the management MOC change request form. Upon receiving MOC request from originator, evaluate the potential impact and the benefits. Okay, so focus on the potential impacts. What will the impact of the change, and what is the benefit that will be safe or not? Okay, how much cost will be incurred for that? What are the resources we need to make this change for practically? Okay, so all these things should be focused. Normal maintenance work, where parts or equipment are replaced by an identical part or equipment of an identical make and model. As we saw earlier, if we are doing maintenance of any equipment and we are replacing any part, and that part is of the same make and model, and the technical description is same as the part already installed in that equipment, and both the part are of which we are replacing or changing, those parts are of the same make and model and same technical specification. So this will not come to the MOC process. This will come to the general maintenance. Okay. So thank you very much for your time. This is a brief information about the management of change process, because this is a topic in the rig site as well, and in oil and gas plants as well, even all kinds of industries. The management of change is a process, an important process to do any change at the work location. It's a standard process going through this, and risk assessed, and also needs to get approval from the authority. Thank you very much for your time.